Hello and welcome to this webinar, Mastering Scientific Posters with Professor Meriel Moore-Colyer. Meriel, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I know that tonight is going to be fantastic. And before I pass over to Meriel properly, I thought I would just say a little bit more about the conference and Meriel's involvement as well. So, as hopefully many of you know, we have been running an annual conference with Horses Inside Out for many years, and we've always had a scientific poster presentation. And last year, Meriel really took this under her wing. With the helping us really with the submissions and overviewing all of the posters to make sure that we get the best possible display, really, because our conference is aimed at therapists, vets, coaches, professionals in the equine industry, although everybody is welcome. And I'm absolutely delighted that next year's theme is wellness and welfare. So we've got quite a broad topic and a fabulous lineup of speakers. We've got a great room at Loughborough University specifically for the scientific posters. And I was so pleased that so many of our delegates came to visit, to sit and really study all of the posters that were on display. And it worked really well having some of the poster authors actually presenting their posters in oral format on the main stage in the lecture hall during the lunchtime. So that was really popular as well. And of course, the competition, oh my goodness. So it went down really, really well last year, and we're going to be repeating it again this year. There's a number of different prizes, but hopefully, well, it's not just about the prizes, of course. It is about getting good equine research out there and encouraging people, students, professionals in the equine industry as well as researchers, to share their information, to share, well, hopefully ideals to improve horses' lives, because at the end of the day, we all love our horses and we want to do the best that we can for them. But having good evidence-based research to help us improve the way we ride, manage, train, look after our horses and care for them, I think is really, really important, which is why I'm so delighted that Meriel has taken the scientific poster under her wing again. The conference is at Loughborough University, and it's on the 20th and the 21st of February. I thought it would be nice for you to see who won last year. Jenna Payne, oh my goodness, she was absolutely thrilled, so surprised, and really got quite emotional, which was lovely. She was so pleased with winning. Here's a page with the links. So as I say, I have put these in the chat so you can access those. The full details about the posters, and includes the application form as well, and just a little summary of the prizes. So the winner gets £1,000 worth of online training through Horses Inside Out. You get a feature in the International Journal of Equine Science, although we still have got to get those details sorted ahead of the next conference, as well as Equine Science Update and an article in Horses Inside Out. There are some other prizes as well, so they're all listed in the guidelines. So that was, I thought, would just be worth sharing a little bit of a summary there. So thank you all of you for joining, and I will now hand over to Meriel for the presentation. Thanks, Meriel.
Hello, good evening. Thank you, Gillian, for asking me to do this session. And in fact, I'm just going to move you out of the
I'm
thing.
going to switch my video off, but I'm still here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, so I'm here to sort of hopefully guide you through how to produce a great poster for the Wellness and Welfare Conference. So what I'm going to do this evening is just run through a few things that we as scientists who do a lot of these things as time goes on how you get your message across and how you decide whether you've got the right sort of study to make a poster from, etc. So I'm going to be looking at various aspects about what makes a good poster, And then I'm going to show you some examples of good posters and how you build that up. And then some examples of posters that are good studies, but they just have sort of gone a little bit wide of the mark in terms of presenting a poster. Because to do this sort of thing is really quite an art. Because you really need to be thinking in the back of your mind that people only spend 2 minutes at each poster. And if they like it, they'll come back again and they'll read a bit more and they'll ask you questions, and that's why you have to be in attendance at the poster. So it's quite important to get this right. And it's also a really good exercise because we're all far too verbose as time goes on. And me being Irish, I'm even probably more so than most other people. But it's to try and get your message across so that people take it home and think, yeah, that was interesting. So the first thing is what the question you ask yourself, what makes a good poster? Well, you need to decide if your study is suitable for a poster. So, and by that I mean, can you actually make it brief enough to make sense? Now, that doesn't mean that you need to cut your study down or any, you might want to present an aspect of it, but if you've done a big study, there can still be aspects of it that are really good for a poster. So can you make a one aspect or make the whole study that you did brief enough to fit onto a poster? The other thing is that posters, because of their very nature, they're visual. And so can I add visuals to my poster? Can I do graphs? Can I do tables? Can I do pictures that actually lend something to the actual story? So you don't just want to say, well, it's about horses, so here's a picture of a nice horse, because that's not really telling us. We all know we're all at Horses Inside Out because we like horses. So it's important that that every inch of your poster actually tells a little bit. You can use usefully and tells a little bit of your story. Is it attention grabbing? So if I walk past and you've got a title, as long as your arm, well, by the time I've read the title, I've spent my 2 minutes there, and I'm thinking I don't really know what that's about, etc. I'll just move on to the next one. So it's quite important to try and make your title a little bit catchy and grabs attention. And the other thing that we will be looking at is it relevant to the conference theme? So that doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't take posters on something else if they're really interesting studies. But really, as each year the conference theme changes a bit, you'll get your chance in a year or so's time to present your study if it's about something other than wellness and welfare. So ask yourself, could this, I suppose it's arguable that everything's about wellness and welfare, but if you're thinking about what it is that you want to present, see if you can make it as relevant to the conference theme as possible. So all of those things, except the visuals, all of those are relevant to the aspect of producing an abstract. Now there are guidelines about how to produce an abstract, because I have to read through roughly 30 to 40 of these. And so the abstract has to tell me about your study. It has to tell me what your study is about, how you did it, what you found, and what's the take-home message. All of that in 300 words. Now that's really quite a tall order. But again, it's a skill, but it's also, it helps you hone down your study and think about how it is that you're going to present all of this to somebody, and then think that it's interesting enough to put into a poster. So basically, if you grab my attention in the 300 words and I think that your study is rigorously carried out, etc., then I'll come back to you. I might come back to you with a few little pointers of how you should maybe change things, etc. But basically, if you can write a good 300-word abstract, then you could do a good poster. So just as a quick note, It's important within your abstract to give a little bit of context. Now, actually, this is one of a study from our group that we did a good few years ago. And in fact, because it was a nice, neat bit of work, the aspect of what we were going to present, we didn't present the entire survey on which this was based, but we were presenting a section of it. So I had a little bit more space to make the introduction a little bit longer. But it's quite important that the introduction gives you a little bit of context. So in that point of view, if you can say, well, look, in terms of wellness and welfare, here is an issue that really does affect the welfare of the horse, and it affects X% of horses. Then that's, okay, so this is a really useful study. This is a study that the industry will have value from, okay? So to give you an example of that, if we look at respiratory disorders in horses, you can say, well, about 16% of the population of horses have respiratory disorders. And over 80% of young thoroughbreds in training have inflammatory airway disease. Now, if you think, wow, that's really quite an issue then, that's quite important. Yes, it is. And therefore, this is why I did this study, because here is a real issue. Then the materials and methods, with something that I've just shown you on the screen now, that is, it was a survey, so it's actually quite easy to describe a survey and just sort of say, well, we put it out on what we put it out on, what it was about, etc. But if you are doing a scientific study, or you've got a lot of information, you've gathered a lot of information from clients of yours, then your materials and methods will be a little bit, and needs to be a little bit bulkier than what is here. That means you'll have to cut down on other areas of the poster, but that's fine. That's good exercise. But you have to actually explain how many horses, what methods you use to collect the data, and how the data was analysed. And those are the three main things that I would be looking for in the materials and methods. And then you go on to the results. Well, the results is the fun bit. It's within a 300-word abstract, we don't ask for tables and we don't want any graphs, because we just want you to say what it is that you found. So it's really important to give the data. Actually present your results. Remember that if you've done some statistics and you've looked at significance, etc., that you put the p-value in, but the p-value only tells you if the two numbers that you're looking at, or the three numbers that you're looking at, are significantly different. The p-value is not the result. It's just telling you how significant the result was. Was it a significant finding? And indeed, what level of significance it was at. Okay. And then we've got the conclusion. And the conclusion is really important, and probably your conclusion for your abstract will be the one that you'll put into your poster. And it's the take-home message. If you said to somebody, if you were standing in a party and you had a glass of wine in your hand and you said to somebody, oh, I spent the last 3 months doing a study. And they said, oh, right, what have you been doing? And you could and said, what did you find? That's the sort of, as it were, the cocktail party line I talk about, is what is the take-home message? What is it that you want people to learn from your study? Okay, so that's really important, that all of this is quite punchy. So writing an abstract on its own, you'll start off, and I always do this, I sort of, throw everything onto the page, and then you go, okay, I can say that a different way, I can cut that out, that I don't need, can I shorten that down, can I use figures instead of words, etc. And then you hone it down and hone it down and hone it down till you get your 300 words, okay? And it's from that I will then read these things and then say, well, okay, that's a decent study. It's a good poster. It shows good scientific rigor. So whether you are gathering information from industry, whether you're doing a survey, whether you're doing interviews, or whether you're actually doing a structured scientific study where you're applying a treatment, etc., I need to know that study has had sufficient numbers, sufficient replicates, and is of sufficient rigor, is basically well carried out. And the last thing that we sort of look for a little bit is that innovation, that new bit. What is this study telling me that I don't already know? What could you tell me that I haven't read about before? Now, a lot of studies, science isn't always about the eureka moments, but we sometimes you get them, and when you do get them, it's amazing. But most of us just chip away and chip away and chip away at the topic. But think of what it is that you've done that's just a little bit different or a little bit newer than somebody else, and make sure you emphasize that within your conclusions. So if you've found out new information about the way people handle horses, or new information about the way somebody's shoeing a horse or whatever, well, that's the bit that we want to know. So that's the first stage. If you want to submit a poster to Horses Inside Out, then the first stage is to write yourself an abstract, or write us an abstract and then send it in. Now, the golden rules of posters is, I've gone the wrong way, that way. So looking at the golden rules, you've got to have a title so that, yeah, you grab my attention. Introduction, your little bit of context. Methodology, how you did your study. Results, what you found. And the conclusion. Okay, so those are the areas, and then I'm going to give you some poster examples, and the abstract I've moved up because I thought that was more important to do first of all, because that is the first hurdle that you have to get through. And then we can happily sit round and talk about your ideas and discussions. You can ask me if you think a particular work that you're doing would be suitable for a poster. Okay. So something that makes a good poster, a suitable poster, is if you report a relevant outcome. So you've done a study and you think, yeah, that I found such and such. So that's actually useful to either other people who are working in the industry, or to other scientists, or policymakers, or looking at protocols for doing things. You might have developed a technique of your own, and just because you've done it doesn't mean that, well, I don't want to tell anybody else, or other people do it differently. Well, we had a poster like that last year about somebody looking at hooves and hoof balance, etc., very differently. No, it certainly wouldn't have been what we would call conventional, but it was an interesting thing to stimulate discussion, and that's the sort of thing that we're looking at. So if you've developed something new, or a new way of doing things, then tell us about it. Bigger things that actually alter practice are really important. And so definitely want to see a poster on that. So if you say, well, instead of trotting a horse on a treadmill for so many minutes, we've decided if you walk, trot in that sort of order, it makes it improves the animal more, or something like that. So it might only be a tweak to something that is done, but it's new and it's useful, and it's going to make a difference to people treating horses. And posters that stimulate thinking are always really useful and required at the conference, because you stand around, have a cup of coffee. Isn't it great to sort of have a good, interesting conversation about something? So we generally sort of block the topic areas into three things: the scientific trials, where you've done a structured trial or a survey or observational. We might have social science, where it's opinion, it might be behavior, it might be societies, and we've had some about a social license to operate, which is very important at the moment, very, very topical. We might be looking at the demographics of people keeping horses, or who keeps horses in certain ways. And then we've got industry practice-based things, where you might have some treatment outcomes. So if you've looked at ways in which you can use ultrasound, or any of these other type of treatments that have improved outcomes in terms of soundness and wellness. New techniques and owner horse incidents. So anything that owner horse interactions, how we look at those, etc. Any of those sort of, basically anything goes. Okay, as long as you can show that you've done a decent bit of work. So the poster should be simple and visual. Use color very carefully, because it can get too dazzling. And so if you're going to do it in blue, so different shades of blue are quite useful to highlight certain things, but don't put in blue and yellow and red and purple because it all becomes a little bit whoa, okay, and you don't know what to look at next. And it's very, very difficult to train the eye to follow a nice logical sequence. With all posters, keep it simple. Keep it the almost the less you can explain. So the less is definitely more in this sort of situation. So a few words are far better, and write in bullet points rather than long sentences. So you could say, water treadmills at 6 inches are best. You don't have to say, well, actually, when we tried using a water treadmill, we found that water depth at 6 inches was best. Well, you can say that by saying 6 inches was best. Yeah. So it's just because that's the sort of thing that somebody can read at a glance and they'll remember it. Aim for your reader to remember one thing. If you can, that's success. Okay, and particularly for somebody like me going around marking them all, is that if something really jumps out at me, I have had a little bit of a preview because I've read the abstracts, but nonetheless, if I could, whoa, okay, yes, that's really nicely done, and that's the big thing that I remember. Don't try and explain every aspect. So if you've run a larger study, a more complex study, well, is there a bit of it that you can look at? So I'm a nutritionist. So for example, if we were looking at improving different analyses for owners to send samples into, well, instead of presenting work on dry matter, organic matter, acid detergent fiber, nutrient detergent fiber, crude protein, water soluble carbohydrates, well, I might decide I'm only going to do dry matter and water soluble carbohydrates. Or I might only want to do ADF and NDF, just look at the fiber aspect, because that was one of the most interesting aspects of the study. Now, it doesn't mean that you're ignoring the rest. You can put in the rest at another time, or write that up in a different way. But instead of presenting all of that and then sort of say, you go away and think, well, I'm not sure which analysis is best for what. Well, in fact, if you say, well, such and such analysis is best way to measure water soluble carbohydrates, well, there's your one message. There's your clear message that you've got from your study. You've probably got 4 or 5 others as well, but only present one. Then emphasize in large or in bold what you found so it's easily seen by the readers. That's a little bit of a trick. So if you want to say that analysis A was best for fiber analysis, well, then you just write analysis A best for fiber. So there's only a few words, put it in bold so that it really stands out. So when we read it, we think, oh yeah, okay, so that's what that is. Interested people will chat to you. That's why you are in attendance. So don't worry about trying to put, well, oh gosh, they wouldn't understand it if I don't explain this. Actually, if somebody's interested and you write it in a way that pulls them in, then you can talk to them and then you can explain all about the studies. Now, in fact, last year we had a lot of interest in the posters, and the delegates spent quite a long time going around talking to the authors of the posters that they were interested in. And that's really nice for them or for you presenting a poster, but it's really nice for the delegates as well, because they can get a little bit more information from you and say, well, funny, I found something similar, or my observations have been different. What is it you did? And that's when you really learn. You get some really nice information. So just going through each one, the title then should be concise, as we've said, and say what the study is about. Don't get over clever. Don't try and be poetic and write a catchy or clever title. Tell the poster viewer what the study is about within the title. Okay, and that's by far the best, because it means that people straight away they know what they're looking at. They're not sitting there thinking, oh, what's all this about then? I haven't got a clue, Big font size, font 70 is the best for the title. So again, you pull people in, and just make sure that it's relevant and it's accurate, that it's appealing. So a long title, complex, be very aware of technical terms or things or abbreviations. Don't do that in titles, because it's lots of people don't know, if it's not their particular area, then it's really difficult to understand what the poster is about. Okay. So if you can make it something slightly different, slightly interesting, grab the attention, all the better. So here is one that this is something that we put together a few years ago, and I can use this because it's my own work, whereas there's authors' rights, etc., and other things. So it's not that I'm thinking that I've done this fantastically well. It's just because I'm allowed to use it, as it were. So we've got the effect of a concentrate diet, and I've put the abbreviation in there because I wanted to use the abbreviation further down in the poster. And I've said to you that actually here is the innovative bit within the title. So I've sort of said the effect of concentrate diet or a novel total mixed fibre ration, which we coined TMFR, on growth rates in thoroughbred foals. So it's saying to you, look, here is something that you haven't actually seen before. It's not actually out on the market, and that's why it's new. But we were comparing two diets, and we're looking at it in thoroughbreds. So you straight away know what the subject was about. So as I said, it needs to be font size 70, which is approximately 1 inch in size on your poster. Choose a clear font, one that's easy to read. Some of these more complex, more flowery fonts, they may look beautiful on fancy advertising and that sort of thing, but not for scientific posters, really not, because it makes it. And remember, we've got some people from outside the UK who are not who English isn't their first language, although most of you guys speak English probably better than we all do. But nonetheless, you want it easy to read. You don't want to have to work out, is that an F or an S? Okay. And then you put in underneath it, you put in your the names of the people who did the study, and it just happens that we were all at the time we were at the Royal Agricultural University. Authors then should be on point size 28. And remember to add all the relevant folk. Just don't, if you have a supervisor, then make sure that you put them on the poster, because your study has not been done in isolation. If you're a master's student, a PhD student, then you've taken advice, and the topic has evolved as you have discussed with your supervisor. So they deserve a mention on the poster. So generally speaking, it's the student or the person who's done the work is the first author, and then anybody else who's helped, and then the person who has organised the study and got the funding and etc. Generally goes on the end. But there's some people like to go second, some people like to go on the end. But the first author, the one that's standing beside the poster, should go at the front. Give your affiliation, your university, your college, your business, because that's important for people to know where you're operating and where you're from, where they can contact you. Logos can go in. We were working with a company called Eclipse who produced the total mixed fibre ration, and that was the university that I was at the time. So the easiest way of doing that is to put in logos. Okay. So that's a fairly easy win. Logos can acknowledge others. So you're saying, well, if you want to acknowledge the fact that you had some financial help with doing your study, then a logo is good from the company. They can acknowledge others. They're generally quite nice to look at as well. And 1 centimetre times 2 centimetres, going generally speaking either side of the top right and left corners, either side of the title is the best place to put them. So moving on then to the introduction. So the introduction gives you context, why your investigation is important. That's the most important thing to put in there. So the numbers are affected, the diet required, the current attitudes, whatever it might be. But why is it that what you're presenting on is an important issue to look at? And why would anybody be interested? Okay, so I had a supervisor many years ago now when I was doing my PhD, and he used to say, okay, so what? And always in the back of my head, there's that when I'm writing a paper, putting together any presentation, I think, well, so what? Why would anybody think that this is in any way interesting? And it makes you home in on that, why the investigation is important. What aspect of this particular question or issue does your study address? What did you investigate? So be sure that when you put your introduction that you sort of talk about, for example, I said it to you about respiratory disorders, then that when you go into your methodology, you will say that your study investigated this respiratory disorders in young thoroughbreds or something like that, so that the introduction will tell you that it's an issue in young thoroughbreds, and then your methodology will say, well, we looked at young thoroughbreds. Okay. Write in bullet points if you can. Again, it helps you get more information in actually than writing a long sort of sentence in your bullet points in your introduction. I tend not to favor sentences because I think you waste a lot of words and you waste a lot of space doing that. The other thing that we are keen that you put in is an aim or an objective. Now, some people use these terms interchangeably. In actual fact, an aim is the overall aim of the project or the study or your PhD or your master's. An objective is generally a small aspect of that. So you have a number of objectives that allow you to address your research question, which addresses the aim of the study. So write a clear aim or a clear objective of what your study sought to find out or determine. Now, you can write it in a research question if you like, or indeed if you've got a scientific controlled study, then you can write it as a hypothesis. But so you write your introduction and then your aims or objectives. So this is the sort of thing that we were looking at when we were looking at these concentrate versus total mixed fiber ration. So sales data encourage thoroughbred breeders to push foals growth rates by feeding high levels of cereals. So there's the first issue. Cereal feeding can predispose foals to developmental orthopedic diseases. A fiber diet fed as a TMFR could mitigate this, but acceptance within the industry is challenging. So I've just given you three main points about the fact that, it's the industry that pushes the thoroughbred foals to be really well grown, probably before they should actually be that grown, so that they get, they get issues because they've been pumped full of cereals. Why do cereals, why are they an issue? It's because they will produce too much can predispose to developmental orthopedic diseases. And what's our study looking at? Why might we actually be looking at this? Well, maybe if we can find a way of feeding these young animals fiber, then it could help to get over that problem. But the thoroughbred industry and the horse industry altogether, but the thoroughbred industry is really quite conservative, and they don't like change, and they do things because that's the way it's always been done. And so we need to build up a picture of why we want to make this better. So our objective, what did we want to do in the study? To determine the acceptability and growth rates of thoroughbred foals fed concentrates versus TMFR diets. So we fed two diets, and we wanted to know, did they like it? Would they eat it? And how did they grow? Because that's the main issue, that people feel that they wouldn't grow on fiber diets, that they'd get pot bellies or whatever. So then, excuse me a second. It's not gin, it's just water. The method is important to describe, because what aspects of what you did are important to bring out. So you need to be able to describe what it is that you did. Keep it brief. Again, write bullet points, saves you words. Photos can sometimes help. If you were saying, well, we wanted to look at a new feeder, well, then a picture of the feeder, so that your people can actually picture what it is that you looked at, can help, instead of saying, well, the feeder was tall and narrow and it was, blah, blah, blah. If you just put a photograph up there, it saves all of that. Please do state the statistics that were used, if you did statistics, or what sort of method in which you looked at the data. So how was the data gathered and how was it analysed? And that's very important as well. So looking at our TMFR study, as it were, we had 8 foals that were matched pairs into 2 groups, A and B, according to birth date, so that we made sure that they were all going to be growing at the same sort of, or potentially could grow at the same sort of rate. Group A were fed 6 kilograms of concentrates per head. Group B were fed 10 kilograms of the total mixed fiber ration per head. We measured them each week. So we did live weight, we did height, we did heart girth, and we did length. And then we determined the differences using a t-test. So we had 2 groups of animals, and we measured how much they grew and how their morphometrics actually changed over time. We actually also decided to, just because people do like nice fluffy ears and foals, etc. But what we did here was show you what the total mixed fiber ration looks like, because you might think, well, was it pellets? What did it look like? How were they fed? So in fact, what the farmer or the stud owner did very cleverly was that he redid one of those cattle feeders, the Iran cattle feeders, with the vertical spaces for each animal to put their head in, and he made a small one of those, and so that the foals could, there were about 6 foals could feed rounded at a time if they needed to. So in fact we only had 4 in each group, but there was space, if you like, that they could space out if they weren't eating next to their mate. So that picture then, it showed people that it was foals, because you can see that they're young animals, and here is the mixed fiber ration. So that's where a picture helped. Then the results, then the bullet points for the main findings. So make sure that you actually say, well, Group A were greater than Group B, or vice versa. The results must match and address your introduction and objective. So be sure that when you write all of this together, that the question that you're asking and the methods that you told us you used actually are what led to the results. Okay, so that you haven't missed something out and there's not a mismatch. And that's the same thing comes for the rest of the poster when you're putting in the conclusions as well. So they must address your introduction and your objective. Graphs here can help show trends and big differences, which is pretty good for impact. So if instead of saying, well, foals grew at, or they were, their wither height grew about 4 inches more than their rump height, well, then put a couple of pictures in, because that can show you the way the animals grew. And or if you're doing heart girth measurements, etc., well, put in the materials and methods, you might want to put a picture of somebody with a tape around the middle of the horse, so that it just shows where the heart girth measurement took place. So any of these graphs and tables, I quite favor tables, but then I'm generally working with nutrition, so it's looking at nutrient digestibilities, etc. So tables work better for me, but in some instances graphs can work very well, and in this instance they did as well. So photographs and tables both must, any of these visuals must be of good quality, because you don't want to be looking at and peering at it thinking, oh, what does that say? I can't actually see that. So if you're going to use one, make sure you have the space to do so and make it stand out, okay? Make sure that your axes that are labeled, so that we know exactly what it is that you've measured, with the units as well. And then a good title that describes what the graph is actually showing. It's a good rule of thumb to think that if you were to just print out the graph and you were to walk up the street and you were to hand it to somebody and say, can you tell me what that's about? They might not be able to explain the nuances of it, but they would say, well, it shows that you're measuring heart girth against growth rate. Yeah, okay, I can see that. And that episode must stand alone, must be like that. So here's the way our poster's sort of coming together. Now the results section we've got, so we used visuals in this case because for a start we were asking, if you remember now in the introduction, we wanted to, or sorry, in the objectives, the acceptability. So did they like it? So the results say, yes, the foals readily ate both diets. We addressed the fact that at developmental orthopedic diseases, swollen joints were observed in 2 of the concentrate diet foals. The what was we wanted to see what are the growth rates of the two groups fed these two diets. Well, the concentrate group started and completed the trial 27 kilograms heavier. They just happened to be bigger foals when they were born than the TMFR group. But the average daily gain, the height and the girth and the length, they're group A equal group B. And we decided to put this into a visual because it stands out really well in that we did have a little bit of, I don't know quite why this particular concentrate group dropped off that week, but they didn't seem to eat all the concentrates that particular time. But generally, as you can see, the live weight gain went up, but it's the difference, the space between the graphs, between the lines that made the big difference. And this shows you that the TMFR group grew at the same rate and put on the same amount of weight as the concentrate group. And then we also looked at calculating the weight according to girth and to an equation was inaccurate for predicting live weight growth in foals. So you could put that in, but in fact, because we didn't actually, that wasn't one of the objectives, that's the sort of thing that was another finding, but that we wouldn't put into the poster because it's not addressing the actual growth rates and the orthopedic, etc. So if we had said in the objective of in the methodology we were going to test whether an equation was right, then we could have put that in. Okay, so there's the title, sorry, of the poster. So the conclusions now on this should be as simple as possible. So again, this is where your take-home message is, okay? So we want to address the introduction and the objective. We want to make sure that it's relevant and it's got to be snappy and memorable. So we're actually going to say, well, okay, this is the main finding. This is what we want you to take home from the study. So here is the conclusion here. So the specifically designed TMFR was readily eaten and produced equal growth rates in thoroughbred foals compared with conventional cereal diet without causing any visible adverse joint developmental problems. So that was the overall finding of this particular study. So that's it, sort of, and then that's basically how it all fits together when you put it all, fitting into its the right size. Okay. So that's how you build up a poster, how you build up your story, and a few tips on how you make your poster as appealing as possible. A little word about scoring before we go into how the goods and good and bad and indifferent ones. Good visual appeal. Is the poster balanced? Do I look at it and go, whoa, that's so bright I can't, or do I have got to get my glasses out and read it because it's black writing on a dark background? Can't do that. Photos do help comprehension, but make sure, as I said before, that they actually lend something to the story. Make it clear and easy to read, good font, legible graphs, figures, logical order, etc. So that's what we're looking for. Does this make sense? Do I understand what you've done? Is it easy to read? Is it appealing? Do I like the look of it? And then we've got these other things, a clear background and objective. Is there an issue here to be addressed? So is this just something you decided to do just for the hell of it? Or is there really an issue here? Is this something that we really need to know? Methods sufficient to know roughly what was done. As I say, you don't have to sort of say, we took the this analysis first and then we did that and that. You can just say we did this and then we took these measurements. And then when I come back and talk to you, you can tell me what sort of measurements, if I have a question, okay, and how they were done. The results have got to be clear, the data analysis evident, graphs and tables relevant, and to answer the introduction and the objectives, and the conclusion must address the main objective of the study. So don't have your conclusion saying, what something different to what actually you have introduced at the beginning. And the other thing that we look at, particularly if I'm looking at posters, a couple of posters, and we had this last year, where in fact we had about four that were really good, and it was really difficult to choose between them. So again, it's the relevance to the conference theme would give you the edge, but what level of impact might your study have? So if what you have found or the results of your study is actually going to make a difference, well, then you've got the edge. Okay. And it might only make a difference to a small group of people. You're not trying to change the equine world. We all want to do that. But oh gosh, if it's for physiotherapists treating something, and you say, well, if you do it this way, you make a big difference, and that has a real impact. You think, wow, okay, that's really helping the physiotherapists. Okay, so that's the way to look at it. So a few other examples of posters. So this was another one that my group did, and that's a little bit what I would describe as a little bit too busy. In fact, looking at the bacteria that was found on meadow hay and implications for gastric ulcers, etc. Really, I think I would have favoured taking something out of this and making it a bit clearer. So I would say that that's a little bit busy. This is the one time when you can use different colors, because that does it makes it easy for you to see the which particular bacteria we're looking at on the graph, what proportion it is. So it's just a different way, as a couple of different ways in which you can present information in different types of graphs. Okay. So this was another one. This was by another student of a novel feeding system. Now this is where a picture of the hay feeder that we were trialing is really useful, because if I had tried to explain that in the methodology, that would have taken up far too many words. Because to explain that it was the grid size that was made designed like a dartboard, so that it went from bigger holes to smaller ones, etc. That the grid actually drops down, and that the ring round the tub, as it were, pulls or drops down, so that the grid always stays on top of the hay, so that the animal can eat, etc. Gillian's actually got one of these, so she can tell us how useful she finds it. So it's that sort of thing. So that wasn't over visual in that way, but it did actually show what we were trying to look at. And here we were comparing whether horses were eating loose hay nets, the hay forager easy or a hay forage standard, etc., just to show what their eating times were. So it shows the significance, the standard error, so how much variability we had in the data, and which ones were significantly different. Okay. So that's just it wasn't obviously on a green background like this. I've just lifted this as an example. Here's another good one. This was presented recently at the Hartpury conference, the Hartpury Student Conference. Nice title, really nicely laid out poster, actually. Clear, the methods aren't too onerous. The results are clear. We've got a couple of nice graphs. There's a couple of pictures of horses there that it's pulling you in, what the results are, etc. Introduction is a little bit more wordy than I personally would have put it in it, but it is only 4 lines, and therefore it was, it read nicely. It did draw you in. This is the one aspect that I would probably have tried to simplify a little bit. Was I would have put the conclusions in and a little bit more brief and gone a little pow. I would have hit people with it. But because it fitted nicely in the poster, and in fact, if you also look at the visuals of that poster, the writing at the introduction and the writing at the bottom of the discussion and conclusions balances the poster out nicely. Okay, so that was a nice example. Here is another one. Now, this is also a reasonably nice poster, but we became a little bit wordy as it got through here. Okay, so it just, it started to write sentences here, and I think that really the discussion really doesn't have any place in a poster. It should just be conclusions. The discussion is what happens when somebody stands beside you and asks you questions, and that's when you discuss and explain them a little bit more. Okay. I wouldn't put in 4 references on a poster. I would choose one key reference and just put it in small font at the bottom, because that's a waste of space really, and it's something that you could have used in a little bit more accurate way. So here now we've got some good studies that were, I was so frustrated with these because actually they were really good studies, but just the information wasn't presented that well. And I was sort of running around here from the introduction to the purpose, to the methods, to the results, and all the colours. I'm a little bit bamboozled by the whole thing. It's not actually over wordy, but look at all the detail here and all of these things here. It's too much in a poster. So one aspect of that would have been, or a couple of aspects would have been better to present and really take that message home instead of trying to tell people too much. Okay, so as I say, these were all good studies, but just not quite the best way to do it. And here's another one, again, a really nice study, but it'd take me a quarter of an hour to stand there and read all of that. Okay, nothing wrong with what they've said, nothing wrong with what they've done, but it's just that's much more, that's literally an abstract that has just been put into a poster. So it's much better to really work hard at how to present this information in a really easily accessible form, because by the time I've got to the end of the results, I'm losing interest by then. Okay. Even if it's my topic area, it becomes, and it's really awkward standing there reading through all of this, and you've got the poor author standing there waiting to be asked questions or wondering what on earth you think, and you're standing there for a quarter of an hour reading through all of this, and they're embarrassed standing beside you, and so it's a much better format to make this snappier, much snappier, and really do your study justice. Same goes for this particular study again. No pictures, nothing really that actually tells me that this is a good study for a poster, because the poster's got to be visual, it's got to show you something. I'm not asking you to describe a study in prose. If I wanted you to do that, we'd get everybody to write abstracts or to write short essays that we would put into proceedings or something. That's not what this is about. This is visual. This is to grab people. This is to get your message across in that short, snappy way and grow interest in your topic. So I think I've probably talked for long enough. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to Gillian, and throw the floor open to any ideas, anything that anybody would like to ask.
So first of all, Marion, a question from Ashley Shaw. I am a certified equine massage therapist, but not a scientist. I want to present my observations and practice with setting boundaries and equine nervous system regulation. Is this an appropriate space if I can present clear data?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's actually people like you that we want to encourage, because I'm always saying this, that you guys that are out there, getting down and getting dirty with treating horses and being involved with horses, you have got a data set that many of you aren't even aware of, and it's such a valuable thing, because experience really can help set guidelines and give people skills that they didn't know. You can't do all of this by just being a research scientist. So what we do as a scientist, we do something and then we put it out into the industry, and we want to know what people are doing, and vice versa. What are you doing that we can look at or investigate, or we can see, could we work with you to make a difference, etc. So yes, we want to hear from people like you, because you have got so much useful data.
Yes, absolutely. I've absolutely concur. That's brilliant. Okay, Jade Hanlon has asked, can we submit undergraduate studies to the conference?
Yes.
Absolutely. We're very open to everyone, I think is the answer. And yeah, please do submit. Okay, Becky Smith has asked, I objectively measure welfare parameters pre and post hoof trimming during consultations using hoof mapping and posture markups. Can anyone can learn this, professionals and owners, to track changes in welfare states in horses as a result of any intervention or change which impacts welfare states. I have many examples with high quality photos indicating improvements to welfare parameters and wish to see the base of wish to base a poster on this. For example, can objective assessment of welfare parameters improve hoof care outcomes over time? Is this something suitable? Is something like this suitable? And has
Yes.
this already been done? Mm.
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, Kirsty's really the one to ask that question of, but not that I'm aware of. But also whether some research may or may not have been done on that. What you've gathered, your data is your unique data, and so you know that sort of topic can generate a lot of discussion. There will be some people who will come up to you and go, "Oh, I don't believe this. That's not the case," or etc. And so, but if you can show evidence of what it is that you are measuring and track it over time, if you've got lots of evidence, you've got what we call a longitudinal study of over time, that's really useful. So yes, yeah. I can see that though becoming very large, and there's going to be so many aspects of it. So you need to think quite carefully about, is there a couple of measurements or some aspect of this that would lend itself well to a poster. Okay.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that, Meriel. Okay, well, that actually was our last question. The only other comment that we've had is that Kelly Lessel, who is doing a study at the moment, she's looking for participants who are or who have been an equestrian coach of any level, qualified or not. And so she shared the survey in the chat. So perhaps if we can encourage people just to take a look at that survey, the link is in the chat there as well. So yeah, you can see that there. So if anyone does have any questions, please add them into the Q&A, because we'll be starting shortly. Now is the chance to ask Meriel any questions that you have. We have had one more question come in. Can we use, this is Louise Cox has asked, can we use data provided by specialists to inform a study? I work with academic content from specialists.
You need to get everybody's permission to do that and be sure that you are not sharing data that is confidential or that is going to in any way contravene GDPR. But as long as you get all of that, and everybody who's been involved in collecting the data, etc., is happy with that, absolutely. But those are just two caveats I would just be careful of.
Yeah, okay. Oh, and we've just had a comment come in the chat, and this is related, Becky Smith, her question, or related to her question, basically saying that they're doing a study at the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences. So I think the best thing is I'll link you two up afterwards. So that sounds very good. Louisa says, thank you. And Becky says, what size is the poster? Are there more details available online on these basics, both abstract and the poster? Yes, I can just say that we've got, if you go onto the web page, and actually I could even, share my screen, couldn't I? And then I can show you the web page. There we go. So this is the web page, which tells people all about the scientific posters. It's got details about the prizes. But down here, you can download the abstract guidelines, the poster guidelines, and there's the application form there. So really, within these three documents is everything that you need to know really about submitting a poster. So it is all on the all on the web page.
If I can make a plea as well, that do read the abstract guidelines carefully, because last year we had a few that didn't come in like that, and it really does make my job very difficult. And it's annoying for you because I keep going back and asking for more and more information, or clarification of such and such. So if you can do that, that would be really useful.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we've got one more question. Is it possible to add a QR code to videos in the poster, or is that not permitted?
No, it is permitted. Yes, yes, that's absolutely fine. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that makes it really interactive, doesn't it? That's
absolutely. Yes, no, very good, very
yeah,
good.
yeah. Okay. Well, I think that is all our questions. If anyone has got any last minute questions, don't just now is your moment. I think we're pretty much there. So I would like to say a huge thank you to everyone who joined us, and I really hope that you submit a poster. It
Yeah,
would be lovely to hear more about your work and what your opinion is and what you're doing with your horses. So that would be absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to see the one, and I so enjoy walking around the scientific posters, reading
yeah.
all the posters, and chatting to all of the uh, all of the authors. We have just had another question come in. Would I
Yeah.
be right in assuming it's a single submission and can't be and you can't also submit to other conferences, for example, ISIS?
You need to check ISIS rules. We are happy to have some posters that have been presented elsewhere, but yeah, I mean you need. I doubt ISIS would let you do that. If you do it at ISIS first and then Horses Inside Out would be all right, but not the other way around.
Yes, I think the thing to say is that our conference would be a
It's a
different
different audience. Mm,
yeah, and for us, we really want people to learn as much as they possibly can.
mm.
And if it's been at a conference before,
So what? Yeah.
yeah, it does. If it's a different audience, it doesn't matter. So it would be yeah. We want to we want to give you the opportunity to get the message out there about your research, and that's really what it's about, I think. So yeah, absolutely. Well, Meriel, thank you so
No
much.
worries.
That's
Hmm.
absolutely brilliant. And I will look forward to seeing you again soon, because Meriel's
Yeah.
actually doing a webinar for us, an update on equine nutrition later on in the year. So if you're a fan of nutrition, a fan of Meriel, and you want to learn more, do join us for that. And I hope to see you all again soon. And look
Okay.
forward to the
Thank you,
submissions
Gillian.
coming in. Thank you so much, Meriel. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.